Are you using Visual Studio Code for writing, whether it be in Markdown or LaTeX? In this video, I'll show you how you can turn your VS Code into a powerful AI assistant for writing using the Continue extension and local large language models that run on your machine privately for free. This is Vincent Codes Finance, a channel about coding for finance research and other tools that I use in my research. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. In this video, I'm going back to Continue, which is a VS Code extension that lets you use large language models as a coding assistant in VS Code. Think a bit of it as a replacement for GitHub Copilot. So it does let you use also cloud large language models as well, but in this case, we'll be using local large language models. I've done a previous video showing how to install and use Continue as a coding assistant. Bear in mind, the logo has changed. So if you've seen this one, well, the logo wasn't the same in the previous video. But in this specific video, what I'll be doing is going a bit more into the features of Continue. And specifically, I'll look at custom/comments and how I've been using them to turn my VS Code into a AI-powered writing assistant. So not for coding, but for writing. And why do I do that? Well, it's because I use VS Code not only for coding, but also for writing, mostly in LaTeX and Markdown using Quarto. So those are my kind of two main tools for writing. So to me, having a good AI writing assistant in VS Code is super important, and Continue is great for that. If you're unfamiliar with Ollama, it is a system that lets you run large language models locally on your machines. I've made a few videos using Ollama, especially one that goes through the installation process, so you can have a look at this one. But if you really want the kind of quick and dirty way, you just go on ollama.com, you click download to download Ollama on your machine. If you're using Mac, I recommend installing with brew, so that would be brew install Ollama. And then you can go into models and install the models that you want. So for example, if you want Llama 3, you would go and either run Ollama, run Llama 3 in your terminal to start the model and interact with it in the terminal. If you just want to download, the command would be Ollama pull Llama 3. Again, all in the terminal. In order to install Continue, you have to go into the extension and search for Continue. So this is the icon you're looking for. You want to install. Once it's installed, it will show up here in your taskbar. So while we're here, there's also two other extensions that I like for writing. I don't have them installed for this example, but these I have in my day-to-day task. So I actually do use GitHub Copilot for writing, but only for the code completion feature. So basically, as I type, it might suggest the end of my sentence, things like that. So it is a feature that is available in Continue.dev. However, I haven't been able to have it work with text, with writing. So if you manage to get that working on your setup, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll update this video. But so far, I'm still using GitHub Copilot sometimes for that. Not always, because it can also be annoying, but and the other extension that I really like is Grammarly. So it is a really powerful grammatical checker, spell checker. There is a free version that works in VS Code, but if you have the premium, you get a kind of more advanced feature. So again, this is not local, it's not open source, but it is really good to improve your writing. It's nice because it works well in Markdown, it works well in LaTeX, that directly into VS Code. But now let's go back to, so I've got it on the left sidebar here. In my previous tutorial, I had it installed in the secondary sidebar, which was the suggestion by Continue. So you can have it installed here, or if you don't want, you can have it there. If you had it installed there and you don't see it anymore, you can go into View, Appearance, and Secondary Sidebar. That's how you activate it. I'll keep it on the left for now. Now I'll open a folder where I have a few text files. I'll actually create a new one. I'll call it text.md. So it's just a pure Markdown file. It works with LaTeX, it works with a Quarto Markdown, but in this case here, I'll only use it with with Markdown. So in this case, there are multiple use cases that I could have. The way you actually going to define these features is through your Continue config file. So for that, you have to go into the Continue panel, click on Configure Continue. And in this config file, you do have a lot of things. So you can find the model. So my default model here is Llama 3, which uses Ollama. There is also a Ollama auto detect here, which means that by doing that, I also have all the Ollama models here that I've got installed on my computer that will show up in my list. But I'll stick with Llama 3. And here I've got the / commands that I've been defined. So this is kind of the typical configuration file that you have when you installed Continue. What's different is that I added some custom commands. So the first one that we'll look at is called spell. So I called it spell. Here's the description that I have, which says check spelling and grammar for the selected text. And here the magic, where it lies, is in the prompt. So in the prompt, I've defined, so I'll start with the input, and then I'll pass a message to the large language model, which is check the selected text for typos and grammatical error, return the input text free from any typo or grammatical error, return only the text, do not include a preamble. Most of the time, it will follow the instructions. Sometimes it will still include a preamble, but what will you do? That's kind of the best I could come up with. So let's go back to my text. So for this example, I'll start with 2 paragraphs that I had in one of my previous posts on my blog. So now I should have a heading. So that's, I'll add a heading just to disable these warnings to make sure that I have a valid Markdown file that's consistent with the style I have got imposed. But here I've got 2 paragraphs. Which have text, and just to make sure, I'll add some typos here in this text just to see whether it's going to catch it. So now if I want to check for typos, all I have to do is highlight my text, do Command L to select the code and send it to the sidebar. So now here it is available. And then I use my / command spell, enter, and I would query Llama 3 using Ollama. The first query, again, it's always like that with a local LLM, and you have to charge it into memory. But here we've got the corrected text, so it has a dictionary-based approach, is a simple way, so it did correct that, to perform sentiment analysis, the sentiment score of, and with associated sentiment score. So the two typos or 3 typos that I've included there were corrected. As you see, even though I didn't ask for a preamble, I did get one. I did get another here, but still I could just go and copy and paste it back or replace it. Or with Continue, you also have the option always to take this text and copy it directly here. If you found the video useful so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. The second use case I want to highlight is improve. So you can also use it to improve the selected text. So here in this case, I do have a prompt, which is fairly similar at the start. And then I say improve the selected text by making it sound smart and professional, avoid using raw words or overselling. And then it's the same instruction at the end to avoid the preamble and everything. So in this case, same thing. The idea here is I can just use the text here, Command L to send it to the sidebar here, and then I would do /improve. And then I would say, okay, dictionary-based approach is a not simple way, but straightforward methodology for sentiment analysis. So it did kind of rephrase my text. So this is super useful. Whenever I do the first draft of a paragraph, I often ask Ollama to kind of rephrase it a bit. And then I might not use it as is, but I will kind of use some suggestion that I get here in order to improve my writing. So the third way I use it is for expansion, where I asked the model to expand the selected text. So as full paragraph. So make it longer by adding details. This is super useful when you only have a kind of short paragraph where you want to make it longer. So for this, again, we'll use the same paragraph here, but I'll call expand. See, it's kind of expand on the ideas that were in the paragraph. So there were kind of 4 sentences in this paragraph. So it made 1 paragraph for each sentence. So again, this is now too long. I'll probably would have to cut, but it is really nice when you want to kind of generate a bit more text or volume in your text. It's also super useful to turn bullet point list of ideas into full featured paragraphs. At least first draft of full featured paragraphs. The fourth use case I have for Continue.dev that I use quite often is critique. So this is to critique the selected text. So again, the idea here is I want to have some feedback on my text and maybe I have suggestions for ways on how to improve it. So in this case, I'll use this same example. I'll select the text. I'll send a critique. And then I do have some ideas. So some kind of critique, some suggestion, and most of the time it will also kind of go way overboard into kind of different ideas. So in this case, it says, well, it's a good start, but there's lack of clarity. There's no specific example in this case, no conclusion or implication. Obviously, it's only a single paragraph. So these ideas aren't in this paragraph, but it's pretty good. I do have some suggestion on how to improve the text. And then there's also an improved version that was suggested here, plus some additional ideas of things that I can expand on. This is for only a paragraph, but obviously I can select more than that. So I could also critique a full text that has 2 paragraphs, or even an introduction or a section of a paper that I'm writing. And finally, the last use case that I have, because I work at a Francophone university, so I have to teach in both French and English. Sometimes the same course will be offered in both languages, so I do have to translate a lot of my material. So I do have here a really simple /comment that I've named French that will take the selected text and translate it to French, because that's typical of my workflow. I would most of the time write initially in English and then translate it and then edit the translated version. So in this case, same idea. We can just take even both paragraph, Command L to send them to the prompt here, and then I would have French here, and then it would give me directly the translation, which is fairly good for Llama 3. And what's really nice with this is I can change, right, the model depending on the use case I have. Say, for example, if I find that Mixtral is better for translation, I could use that one and then come back for come back to Llama 3 for other things such as expand. And then what's really good with this Continue extension is that it is really easy for you to create your own commands, right? That's the idea here. These commands are for me. I've designed them because they fit into my workflow, but you can design them your own. Basically, all you have to do is pick a name that's not in one of these built-in commands. So you have to have something different than, say, edit, because edit is already one that's taken. You write your description. That's mostly for you. And then the key here is writing a prompt. You can play with it, try it out. If you find other really nice use cases, like, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to improve my list here of different / commands that I can use for writing. One new feature of Continue that I haven't been able to make work properly for writing on my VS Code is tab autocomplete. So it's a bit similar to what I use GitHub Copilot for when writing. So it will, as I write, as I type, it will try to complete my sentences and my paragraphs. So I've tried it a few different ways, but I've never been able to make it work properly for completing text. If you do figure out how to make it work, let me know in the comments. I'd be really interested in having that work for me so that I could completely let go of GitHub Copilot for that feature. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and consider subscribing so that you get notified of my future videos.